Hey guys, welcome to my video on aggregate supply. Aggregate supply, as you might already know, links real output and the price level. And in this video, I intend to give an overview of aggregate supply, especially the difference between short run and long run aggregate supply, because they are very different. And they also have a lot of similarities. Of course they do, they're both supply curves. But we're going to talk about some of the assumptions behind each of them, some of their interactions between each other, the things that move them, stuff like that. So first thing, for short run, prices might change slowly. So economists sometimes will casually refer to this as sticky prices, where just because your economy changes today does not mean that prices necessarily will. And there can be lots of reasons for this. One of them is long-term contracts. If your wages or purchases of large items are locked in and prices are stuck for a long time, prices won't be able to respond to economic changes until those contracts expire. Other reasons is inventories. They can build up or they can shrink, but they shield immediate production and prices from economic fluctuations. Incomplete knowledge, cost of changing prices, these are all things that can make our prices sticky or slow to change. And so when we graph our short-run aggregate supply curve, it's upward sloping, linking Y, or real GDP, and price level. And there it is. The general idea you can still think of is that if the general price level of final goods and services goes up, then firms want to supply more of it. And so that one feels quite a bit like a regular supply curve, even though it's different. The long run's a little bit crazier though. First question is, how long is the long run? Well, I don't have a completely firm answer for you. I'm just going to say it's long enough for prices to unstick. Long enough for these four things on the side here to not be important anymore. The contracts expire, we get the knowledge we need, we're going to change prices anyway, so the cost doesn't matter, you get the idea. In the long run, input prices are going to adjust proportionately to output prices, which means that real profit per unit is going to stay the same no matter what the price level. So I'm not saying we can't make money today, I'm just saying that in the end, input prices will change to match output prices, and real profit isn't really going to change. And that means that there's not going to be any incentive for our supply side of our economy to increase or decrease real GDP. That means that our graph looks very different. Our graph has a straight up and down long run aggregate supply curve. And what level of GDP is it at? Well, it is at potential GDP. Y bar is my notation for potential GDP, and it represents the level of production that we get at full employment, or the natural rate of unemployment, the amount of production if all firms produce at full output without going into their overtime, stuff like that. And so while in the short run we get this upward sloping, if we wait long enough that all the prices can adjust, well then what's going to matter is our productive capacity rather than the prices themselves. So let's get into a few things here. Let's combine these two graphs together. And I'm going to throw a number on here. It's not really important to my example. I just want to remind you that when I say Y bar, I'm referring to a fixed amount, like it's a dollar amount of real GDP. But I'll put Y bar down there just to help you remember. And then there's this short run aggregate supply curve. One thing I'm interested in when we combine these two graphs is, what is that intersection? What happens when a short run and long run aggregate supply equal each other? Well, it tells the input price level that we expect to prevail in the short run. So it might be expected price level at that point is 100. Whether that be measured on your CPI or in some other way, whether there's some price level that we expect it to be. That's for input prices. If we had a different short run aggregate supply curve, we would have a different expected price level. when our short run aggregate supply curve moves around, the expected price level will move around as well. So that gets to our next question. What actually ends up shifting the short run aggregate supply curve? What makes it move? Well, here's a graph. Things that can change it: the size of the labor force, how much capital stock is in the economy, technology changes, changes in expected future prices, adjustments of workers and firms to past errors about expected price levels. Meaning, if our expected price level was wrong, that can make it so we change the short run aggregate supply curve next. And then also the change in price of important resources. That's a lot of things that can move this, and these all affect our economy's productive capacity. Specifically, if I wanted to say what increases short run aggregate supply, shifting it to the right, I would want more workers, more capital, better technology, lower future prices, because that'll make us want to produce things today. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this adjustments one. If we had overestimated input prices and our expectations were too high, well, then we'll lower them to match reality. And as we lower wages and prices, our input prices, that will increase short run aggregate supply. And the next one is changes in important resources prices. Well, if resource prices go down, then short run aggregate supply shifts to the right. Okay, so there's kind of a list of things that can shift your short run aggregate supply curve. Let's look at this. Here's expected price level. What if we're not at the point where short run and long run interact with each other though? What if instead we're here? Oh, that means that the actual price level is not the same as the expected price level. The actual price level, in this case, the price level is greater than the expected price level. And that'll be my notation for expected price level when I'm too lazy to write all three words. E of PL, the expected price level. There you go. So in this situation, we underestimated the price level. Our expectations were less than actual. And so, what does that mean for our supply curve? That means firms will raise prices and wages. They will bring their prices and wages closer to the reality. And as they do that, input prices are rising, and so the short run aggregate supply curve will decrease. It will shift to the left like that, which then, by the way, would give an entirely new expected price level. I do have more to say on this topic, but I'm going to save it for another video, so I'm just going to pause there. I'll have a lot more to say when I put aggregate demand curves on here, because it'll make more sense why we might not be in short run equals long run. But before I finish up this video, let me first talk about the long run aggregate supply curve and what shifts it. New technology, bigger labor force, investment in new capital, new natural resources. You'll notice that several of these look a lot like several of those. Maybe I worded them a little differently and some of them are exactly the same, like new technology or a bigger labor force. That's okay. They're both supply curves. Don't be surprised if they have the same shifters, or at least if they share a few of the same shifters. These are things that will permanently increase our productive capacity. And so what would that look like? Well, if we drew on a graph and we were at long run aggregate supply 1 and y bar 1, and then if we wanted to get better technology or more workers or more equipment and capital or more natural resources, any of those things will increase our productive capacity, and we will wind up at a higher long run aggregate supply curve. Now, that's an increase in potential GDP. That's called growth. Well, quick caveat. I say it's called growth. It's called growth if Y bar increases faster than your population. But that is roughly how we would approximate growth in this model, is by shifting long run aggregate supply to the right. I think that's all I really wanted to cover. So I hope it was helpful to you. If not, too bad. But good luck with your econ, and wait for the next video. I will combine aggregate supply and aggregate demand in the same graph. Thanks for watching, guys. Happy econing.